Welcome to Real Estate Talk, where we share everything about real estate and home life. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's show, and be sure to rate and subscribe to hear the latest episode. Well, welcome everyone to this week's episode of Real Estate Talk with Zelda. And I'm your host, Zelda. Today I'm really excited because I've got my good friend here, Barbara Tolliver-Haskins, and she's going to talk to us about what's love got to do with it when we're buying and selling whatever we're buying and selling. So let me tell you a little bit about Barbara. Barbara, she's an accomplished organizational leader, and prior to her successful she was an executive at State Farm Insurance Companies, and she has over 25 years of corporate leadership experience. She has lots of who's behind her name. She's won awards. She's been the president of Women Business Owners, the Jacksonville Women's Business Networking. It was a Jacksonville Women's Network. I should know that one. And she's the founding chair for the Board of Directors, National African American Women's Leadership Institute in both Greensboro, North Carolina, and Dallas, Texas. So I'm really excited about that. And in 2014, she was awarded the Women of Color Economic Development Award for her contributions as an executive coach. And she owns the Executive Coaching Solutions. She's based out of Jacksonville, but I can tell you she goes wherever you are. So Barbara is an incredible executive coach, and she's affiliated with the International Coaching Federation. So welcome, Barbara. I'm glad you're here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Zelda.
Well, we're gonna get started in just a second. I want to tell our listeners a little bit about why I wanted to talk about emotional intelligence. Our topic today, it's called Love It. What were we calling us?
What's love got to do with it?
What's love got to do with it? And that's all about emotional intelligence. So recently, I had the pleasure of hearing Barbara speak at a luncheon, and she was talking about emotional intelligence. And as I sat back and I listened to her, it occurred to me that a lot of my buyers and sellers buy on emotion. I can't tell you the number of times I've walked into a house to show someone, and they walk right through the house because they can see the backyard, and they fall in love with that backyard, and so they're ready to buy it. I'm like, don't you want to see the rest of the house? So, Barbara, tell me, when you hear the term emotional buying as an executive coach, tell me what that is.
For me, it is the ultimate demonstration of what human connection means. As human beings, we are wired to find meaning and to find things of significance that resonate with us. And coupled with that, sometimes the decisions that we make are good. Sometimes they may not be so good. And that is where the relevance of the skill sets of the realtor, the person introducing the home, comes in. Because he or she has to really be aware of the emotions that are taking place. There's so many emotions that go on within our brains that we are totally unaware of. When I was going through recredentialing certification a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to get some training from an individual who was in brain psychology.
Oh, okay.
And what I learned from her is that simultaneously there's so many different neurons going on in our minds, and we as individuals have to really be aware of what's happening. Why? Because if we're unaware, we get confused. The person who may be around us gets confused, and they may think that we don't know what we're doing or that we are really incompetent, when in fact it's just all of those emotions churning.
So when you mention that we go into a house, I'm going to give you some cases, some
Yes.
scenarios. So you're walking in, now a lot of times you're walking in to show a home,
Yes.
and you have both a husband and a wife,
Right.
or partners.
Right.
And one of them is using their emotions, and one of them is using their what would the other, their intelligence go, their
Right.
real intelligence, the
Right.
left brain and the right brain.
Sure.
So how would you suggest a realtor should handle such a situation?
Well, what I would suggest is even beforehand, there would be conversations with both individuals. Perhaps creating some sort of a cheat sheet or something that will, in
Great.
coaching, we call it wisdom accessing questions. In other words, what that means is finding a method to get information that you need before you're actually in the situation.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's like doing your homework.
You're right.
It's doing your homework.
Doing your homework. So, for example, the husband calls and says, we're looking for a house. He gives you the criteria, and he says, my wife and I might be having some conflicts in terms of what it is we actually want. So then you might say, well, give me an illustration of what's happening. And how does that impact you? Now, let's be fair to your wife. From your perspective, how does it appear to be impacting her? So you find maybe 3 or 4 questions so that when you get into the setting, you've already come up with an illustration of how they can resolve
True.
whatever and it isn't necessarily conflict. It's the emotional preference
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
one might have.
Exactly. It's kind of like when you see on TV, I'm claiming this room,
Yes.
or I'm claiming that room. It's like they both want that room to be their man cave or their she cave or whatever it is.
Right.
It's like
Right.
knowing what's important. It's like the give and take and trying to help them and remind them what was important to them.
Excellent. And one thing I would share, when I relocated back to Jacksonville, Florida, we found our home on the internet. And I wasn't able to travel. Would you believe that I sent my husband
Oh, dear.
on my behalf? But when I saw pictures of the home, I was emotionally attracted to the porch. I like Victorian-style homes.
Okay.
And I am a dreamer. Looking at that porch that wound around the entire front area, I envision the 1800s when the ladies would be dancing and have
Oh, wow.
their dresses on and their little shoes.
Yes, yes.
And I just loved it. So sometimes that emotional piece is in our brain. It's come from reading. It's come from dreaming. I certainly had no idea of what it was.
Right.
So it could be something in someone's past that has so much significance. And if there's a way that the partner can hear what's going on, or the husband, they're like, I didn't know that.
I can tell you, it's very often that I'll walk into a home, and it's typically, like I said, they don't even, it's usually a backyard. It's
Yes.
usually the backyard. There may be a pool back there, or just the lanai or something like that.
Right.
And they just like what you said, they can envision themselves sitting there having a morning coffee. Whether they do or not is another story. It reminds me of when I was living in my house for 34 years, and my son-in-law came over, and he was building me the fire pit that I wanted. I always wanted a fire pit. And then and I had envisioned my family, kumbaya, sitting around the fire pit and
Absolutely right.
toasting marshmallows. And do you know, nobody, it was always too cold. Nobody would ever sit out by that fire pit. So when I was building this new house, I actually thought, I'm going to have a fire pit. And then I started thinking, why am I building a fire pit? Nobody's going to sit there.
And that, too, could be one of the end results of emotional buying, buying with emotion.
Yeah.
And then Zelda, where you add value, is stepping in and say, well, now here are a couple of illustrations that you might want to think about. If you can create the experience
Yes.
that leads them into reality, wow.
Wow, yes. So let me switch it up for just a second here. So let's suppose we have somebody who's selling a house, a different emotion.
Yes.
So they're letting go of the home that maybe they had a baby in, and so it's got those memories,
Sure.
or the home that they raised their children in and they're downsizing, and they're having trouble, or one of them is having trouble letting go.
Right.
So how do we address that one?
Well, one of the things we do in coaching is we move from the reality to what could be. So that means, giving you an illustration, it might mean something like, I had my child in this home, I'm so connected to it. And then we say, wow, imagine 10 years from today what she might like, or what they might envision, or what fun they might have.
That's true.
So you move them from a very, I don't want to say fearful situation, but a very significant situation, to a new joy that they had not had the opportunity to visit.
Oh, that's so true,
And
Barbara. That's so
about
true.
coaching. For me, when I can move my client from disappointment, from fear, from having the excess baggage because of being fired, and getting them into a situation where they say, man, I can add value, I can do this, someone cares, and I can demonstrate the skill sets that I have. Imagine the new platform that brings.
That's so awesome, and that's just so right on. I just, again, I can only tell you about my own experience when I just sold my home of 34 years.
Yes.
It was emotional letting go, and I see pictures of it today, and I go, oh, that was such a pretty home.
Yes.
But I also know that I'm moving to a new adventure.
Wow.
And so you have an open mind. So it's
Yes.
the mindset.
Yes.
It's just the mindset, that
Right.
emotional saying, well, I'm off to new adventures.
Right.
So
So
the
love has
possibilities.
yes, love has everything to do with it.
That's right.
And sometimes just knowing that love has everything to do with it, we can take love to a new level.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
And it sounds like, as realtors, what we have to be doing is coaching our
Yes.
clients,
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
which is what you do. You coach
Yes,
them.
right.
So it sounds to me that if a realtor is is struggling with this because they have these conflicts with these
Sure,
couples, what they really need is to contact Barbara.
Oh, yes. Contact Barbara.
Contact
Yes.
Barbara to learn the skill of how to coach your customers
Yes.
past that. And it's really, it sounds to me, what I'm hearing is, it's acknowledging
Right.
the behavior,
Right.
or the negative or what have you, but moving
Right.
to a more positive.
Yes, right. Acknowledging that, recognizing that this is a human that we're speaking with. This isn't someone that we saw in a book and characterized that person by the individual that we read in our book. This is a human being with many needs.
Yes.
We have the opportunity to fill that need.
That is so true. That's great. I can't think of anything else here to add to this. This is just right on. Tell me a little bit more about what you do in coaching and executive coaching solutions.
Okay, a couple of things that we do is we work with leaders. And when I say leaders, it can be a leader in a nonprofit organization or corporation, an educational institution. It's not limited to business owners.
Okay.
But we work with leaders with the intent to moving them to higher levels of understanding the added value that they bring into their work environment. And one of the things that I learned as a leader is that we not only impact the individuals who look to us for leadership, there's an exponential impact on their families.
Yes.
So sometimes we might say they need to leave their problems at home. First alert, they can't always leave their problems at home.
That's so true.
So as a leader, this is where emotional intelligence comes in. This was where understanding the current situation, recognizing that I still have a business to run, but if I can create positive emotions, a positive meaning for this person, then I can continue to get the level of performance that I might not receive when they're dealing with anxiety and frustration.
That's wonderful.
Right. And then another thing that we do is career strategy.
Now, is this strictly with corporate, or do you work with individuals?
Individuals as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
So for career strategy, it could be with someone who just doesn't know what they want to do. Excellent IQ, but maybe their EQ or their emotional intelligence quotient is not where it should be. And in the book introduced by Daniel Goleman that made the bestseller list for only 10 years.
Only?
Yes, he challenges leaders to think about why emotional intelligence is what takes the organization or the educational institution or the doctor's office to the extra incremental performance. Because the IQ gets you there, but the EQ takes you further.
Yes.
And so my goal with all of my clients, regardless as to who that client is, to make sure that we focus on emotional intelligence. We have assessments that we do, in-person activities that we do, and that is one of my key areas of focus.
You know, you mentioned something that really struck a chord with me again. It was, and I always bring my family into it because, hey, why not?
Yes.
So I'll throw one of my kids under the bus, I guess. But recently, one of my children's, my daughter, received a letter in the mail. And it was in a plain envelope, handwritten, and she opened up that, and I noticed her at the kitchen table reading this letter. And she was getting all teary-eyed, and I'm like, what's in that letter?
Yes.
And so she said, my husband's boss wrote me a letter telling me how wonderful he is and appreciating me being so supportive of my husband.
That is awesome.
And he's doing very well, and he's just doing phenomenal. And to recognize the wife and the sacrifices she's making for them, it was, talk about emotional.
Yes.
That boss is right on.
He is right on.
I mean, how many bosses do that? I've never heard of any.
But see, that's the key. And one of the things that we talk about is that the whole person comes to work.
That's what you said. That's exactly right. It's like you don't know. I remember in an interview for my first book, The Art of Bouncing Back,
Yes.
I actually interviewed Karen Mathis. Okay, so editor of, I think, Daily Record now. And she, at the time, worked for, what is the group? Dreamfind? No, not.
No, it's a nonprofit group.
Yeah,
She worked for.
one of the
Yes.
nonprofits that she worked for. I
Yes.
can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but she told me, and it always stuck with me, that you never know when people are going to work, you know, what they woke up to.
Yes.
So they may have cut you off or grabbed that place that you were going to park in, and they're angry or whatever, but you don't know what state of mind they're coming from. So even though you get all emotional, maybe you take a step back because
Right.
maybe they had an argument with their spouse, or maybe their child was sick and they'd been up all night and had to get to work quickly. So you just don't know, but you have to take the whole family into
correct.
consideration when you're dealing with people.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And then another thing, too, that we need to think about as leaders or whenever we're in areas where we're working with someone is that how we criticize someone. Because if we criticize someone, it's an embarrassment. And if it's an embarrassment, it impacts them in a negative fashion.
Absolutely.
And negative emotions impede performance and contributions.
Oh, I would think so.
And sometimes, depending on where we sit, and because we're so committed to getting everything done exactly right, if we're not careful, we will criticize or embarrass a very talented individual to the point that they become frustrated and depressed. And it might take a while to get them to come back to the performance level that they were providing ahead of time. Or sometimes, depending on the situation, you could hurt them for an extended period of time.
Where they leave.
Oh, well, they leave. That's
They
another
leave.
thing.
They leave. You have to be careful. We're dealing with humans.
We are.
It doesn't matter if you're working in corporate America, if you're a business owner, or selling a home. You're dealing with individuals,
You
and
are.
you just don't know what's going on in their head.
And that's what intrigues me so much about what I do.
Yeah.
Because each individual brings his or her own experience into your presence.
Well, that I just find this so fascinating. I think we could probably go forever and ever and ever talking about this. But if you need to reach Barbara, if you reach out to me at gozelda.com, my website, it's gozelda.com, or zelda@gozelda.com is my email. I'll be happy to connect you with Barbara. She's just absolutely awesome. I'm sure she does speaking and she does coaching, just whatever you need, I'll hook you up. Thanks for joining in today.
Oh, this was wonderful too. Have a great day today.